Okay, so it's been a month. I might be a bit rusty. I'm sure that like two people may have missed the show. I'm aware that it is an awkward time slot, but hey, let's get straight back to it. So this season, you can probably tell from the title, maybe, um, by which I mean where it says now creating over here ish. Uh, this season is, and the YouTube title by all means, and also the Twitch title. Never mind. By any title that you can possibly see, you've probably figured out this is a Trinity Continuum product. Um, I'm going to be looking at how to add horror-specific mechanics and gifts, edges, things like that to your Trinity Continuum games. If I feel up to it, if I have any ideas that I feel are sufficiently strong, I may add some uh, adventure outlines for one shots as a hey, this is how you can use these mechanics in the story. I may not. That kind of hasn't been firmed up yet. I wasn't originally going to be doing this. I was originally going to be doing a cosmic horror. Space squids, Prampster, space squids may occur. There may, in fact, be a cosmic horror section that I plan on exploring. Originally, I was going to be doing a cosmic horror themed adventure that then became a kind of a generic adventure that I would have. Each scene would have a selection of mechanics you could choose from to tailor it to your specific flavor of horror. And then I was talking to one of my own Twitch community, and they were like, "Well, why not just make a supplement of horror mechanics?" And I was like, "You know what? That worked for Wizards of the Coast. Maybe it'll work for me." So, shout outs to Unstable Dales. Shout outs to Wizards, obviously, for providing the inspiration, which I'm not going to crib from. It's completely incompatible. Like, this is mostly from scratch, based on my own understandings of the genre, and my own experiences running horror role playing and reading horror role playing rule books, and just reading horror fiction and consuming horror fiction in general. So as usual, my name's Ryan, or Comrade Bubbles in chat. I'm a moderator on the channel, so behave. Okay. I am not an official representative of Onyx Path. This is purely going to be community content. That's why the Storypath Nexus logo is at the bottom of the screen. It will be going up on the Storypath Nexus when it's ready, TM. Speaking of when it's ready, TM, my last book, I guess, from the last season of this show, People of the Snow, is halfway through editing. By which I mean I've done one editing pass. The second editing pass is usually much faster because I've got most of the egregious errors out of the way. After that, I go into layout and shove whatever art I can find into it from the resources provided on the Sluretian Vault. And at that point, it'll be released for public consumption. I will, of course, keep you updated when it is released. If you want to get like immediate info on when it's released, please do by all means follow me on Twitter where I'm at Comrade Bubbles. If not, just stick around for the show, or just keep checking the Sluretian Vault. One of the three, I guess. Or if you're not bothered, that's totally fine. But this is all community content. It all goes up on the community content channels. I don't even currently freelance for Onyx Path. I just have the platform, and as ever, I'm incredibly grateful to Onyx Path for allowing me this opportunity. Okay, so if I've set this up correctly, you should not be able to see my notes. Oh, right, that reminds me. Between when I last checked and when I was preparing for the show on the weekend, turns out I can now capture Word in OBS, so they must have changed somehow. That must change the way that windows were captured, although the last time I checked was quite some time ago. So we'll be using Microsoft Word. It's a lot better than Google Docs. It's a lot easier in some ways. As anyone who works in Word could tell you, perhaps, importing things from Google Docs into Microsoft Word, whether it's Control-A, Control-C, Control-V, or you can actually save Google Docs as Word documents. It's not a painless process. Sometimes there's some weird formatting things that happen. So being able to write straight into Word is much preferable. I would say. But kind of standard things apply. Always do your formatting as you go. So I've set up my headings. The only heading I haven't set up because I'll be honest, I ran out of time to do so when I was thinking about it this morning, is heading 3, but heading 3 will just be a copy of heading 2. But if you keep everything formatted as you go along, it helps for revisions. It helps while you're writing because you can refer to things easily, and it's just one less thing you have to do at the end. I have also preset my sections. So these are all different sections. So when it comes to headers and footers, I don't have to worry about that when I import them into the Trinity Continuum template, which I assume is a template. I have zoomed into 120%. So if people are watching this on mobile, hopefully it's somewhat readable. I'm aware that some people do, and sometimes 100% just isn't far enough in. Any closer, and I don't like reading text that large, just personal preference. But if it is an issue, let me know, and I'll make it work for me, just so that you can read what's happening. Although, as usual, I'll be talking through what I'm writing. Anyway, that was a digression about Microsoft Word and Google Docs and the differences, some of the differences between the two. So this is my show notes tell me, episode 48 of this show, which is incredible. I think it's season 7, episode 1. Trinity Continuum. I am disabled. I will get my usual preamble out of the way once I've done the pre-introduction, I guess. I'm disabled. I do experience muscle spasms in any muscle group of my body. When it affects the muscles of my jaw, my head, and my neck, speech can be difficult. I do have a stutter anyway, and it can make that worse. I can slur my words, or my head can violently jerk to one side or the other. I apologize. I'm aware that it makes it disquieting to watch and difficult to understand. I speak quite quickly anyway. I do try to rein myself in for this show so that people who may not be as confident with English as I am, or who just struggle to understand people who speak quickly, which totally legitimate, can understand as much as possible. Some things to just be aware of. Just make sure nothing's gone wrong with my screen. No, my scenes are all set up still. I do also struggle with multiple trains of thought, so I will try to finish what I'm talking about before answering any questions from chat. If I feel that the chat question is vastly more important than what I'm talking about, I will answer that and then try to resume what I was saying. If I can't remember, to heck with it, we'll just move on. But if I'm mid-train of thought and you say something, I'll try to acknowledge it at the very least and then continue with what I was saying. Again, I don't know why I'm wearing my headset. There's no music, but it's habit at this point as a streamer and a content creator, so it's the earphones stay on. Also, it helps keeps my hair out of my face while it dries. Long hair problems. Okay, so standard start of show preamble. As usual, the best place to go for any updates regarding the Onyx Path is the Monday meeting notes, which, as is my habit, I shall summarize for you. Obviously, the main thing right now is that the apocalyptic record for Werewolf the Apocalypse 20th anniversary edition, is going on. There's the Kickstarter link. That's overfunded. It's at like 200% funding with 9 days left. So if you're interested in Werewolf the Apocalypse 20th anniversary edition, definitely check it out. It's not personally something I'm interested in, but people I value the word of, shall we say, are interested in it. They say it's pretty good, and some of them have worked on it. So go and support that. What else? Onyx Path recently announced that Mystery Science Theater 3000, have announced sponsors for their upcoming season and streaming site, and Onyx Path is one of them. So that's pretty exciting if you're interested in MST3K. A convention ran on the weekend, Save Against Fear. The panels were well received. Some discussion about the Crossroads continent, which is Rich Thomas's very own continent, which he and Travis this channel's very own Travis Legg, or Plastic Age Plays, are bringing updating for D&D 5e. A lot of the panels are going up on YouTube at some point, so that's that. Drive-Thru RPG are having a Halloween sale, coinciding with Indie Press Revolution's Halloween sale, which I believe has 20 to 40. One of those is 20 to 40% off, but as I scroll down the notes, I will tell you. More importantly, speaking of Trinity Continuum, if you follow the Monday meeting notes link and scroll down to the media section, you will see my very own face there. I had the great pleasure and enjoyment taking part in a Trinity Continuum core story path showcase run by Travis Legg, where I got to play a character completely wildly out of type for my usual characters, and it was a lot of fun. The finale is now available, so you can watch the whole thing. It's only 4 episodes, I think it was. We did a session 0, and then I think it's 3 recording sessions. Highly recommend watching it. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, that's all I've got. Also available is the next in the story path showcase with Trinity Continuum Aeon, and there's Aberrant stuff, and all usual links to podcasts and actual plays and panels that have gone up since last time. Some virtual tabletop stuff for quick starts and token packs. All those good links. I was looking for dates for the sales. Drive-Thru RPG's Halloween sale starts on Thursday. Most horror titles will be 20 to 40% off, as well as free treats. Now, before I go any further on the Monday meeting notes, I'm going to minimize the window so I can see chat if needs to be. With the Drive-Thru RPG's Halloween sale, if you do happen to pick up the Chronicles of Darkness core rulebook, which is the blue one that just says Chronicles of Darkness on it, it's not Vampire the Requiem, it's not Changeling the Lost Second Edition, it's none of those things. It is literally just Chronicles of Darkness. And you're like, hey, what can I do with this shiny new PDF, or if you pay for print on demand hardcover, well, boy, do I have good news for you. On this very show, last year, in fact, I wrote an introductory adventure for Chronicles of Darkness. It is pay what you want, so it's technically free. So while it won't be part of the sale, it's still free. You can pay nothing for it, and there's no hard feelings. As long as you get some use out of it, if you play it, all I ask is a review, and you don't even have to do that. That's the self-plug out of the way. Let's get back to the Monday meeting notes. I might try to remember to include the link to that in the YouTube description when this goes live on YouTube. On sale this week, speaking of World of Darkness, of Darkness things, for World of Darkness, which is the 20th anniversary game lines, Ghost Hunters is out. So, ghosts in the World of Darkness. That's exactly what it sounds like. And then, continuing to scroll down, there's the standard project status updates. There's a lot of stuff moving along quite nicely. The editing bottleneck has slowed slightly, and things are now in post-editing development and art direction. And largely, that's it. So, minimize that. Consult my show notes to tell me what I should be talking about next. Okay, my show notes tell me that the next thing to talk about is what is Trinity Continuum. So, which makes sense. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of horrors of the Continuum and what the book will entail and all of that stuff, I should probably explain what Trinity Continuum is. So a lot of people know Onyx Path for publishing the Of Darkness books, right? Vampire the Requiem, Changeling the Lost, Promethean the Created Wealth, the Forsaken, and all of that good stuff. As well as the 20th anniversary of Darkness games, Vampire the Masquerade, Wealth the Apocalypse, Mage the... because I can never remember which mage is which. It would help so much if they weren't both the letter A. They're also the publishers for Pugmire, Cavaliers of Mars, stuff like that. But those are all licenses. Those are all games that Onyx Path make products for via licenses. But they do have a couple of their own self-owned games. They came from, I believe... There's a handy dandy graphic that's out there, easy to find if you want to know the specifics, but they came from Scion and Trinity Continuum, and largely speaking, they all use the story path system. The story path system is an evolution of the storyteller system that powers the Of Darkness games, but is distinct enough that it's its own thing. But much like the Of Darkness stuff, it is a D10 pool-based system where your character sheet tells you how many dots you have in a skill and an attribute. You count up those dots. That tells you how many dice to roll. You roll that number of dice, and then your target number, in most cases, in Trinity Continuum at least, is 8. So any die that results in an 8, 9, or a 10 is a success. A 10 you can reroll, it explodes, and you might get more successes. You might even get more 10s, in which case you can reroll again. But that's essentially what it is. Trinity Continuum uses the all three of those games I mentioned. They came from Scion and TC. I think they came from User Story Path. It's on my to-read list. I have it. I have one of the They Came From games, but I just haven't had time to go down to reading it in preparation for so many things. But they all use the story path system in slightly different ways. So whilst what I talk about here and what I write here will be broadly compatible with Scion, for example, it won't match up one-to-one. And, that's by design. Scion is for telling wildly different stories than Trinity Continuum. Trinity Continuum is for telling more like heroic fantasy stories. Default setting in the core book. So you may have heard me mention Aberrant, Trinity Continuum Aberrant, and Trinity Continuum Aeon. There's also Trinity Continuum Adventure, and Trinity Continuum Anima in the works, I believe. They're all set in different timelines, or time periods, I guess, and evoke different feels. So Aberrant, I believe, is superheroes, and Adventure is pulp heroic stuff, punching Nazis whilst riding mecha dinosaurs in the jungle to save historical relics, that kind of thing. Trinity Continuum base game is contemporary, modern day fantasy, urban fantasy, sorry, with sci-fi elements and all of that good stuff. But what it doesn't have is horror. So what this series of the show, or season if you prefer, of the show, and by extension the supplement I'll be writing, is how you can use the story path rules as presented in the core Trinity Continuum rulebook to evoke horror. Obviously, that is a bit tricky. The game is not designed around that. So some things may not work 100%. I personally have very little experience running Trinity Continuum. I've read the book twice, I think, and I've played it a couple of times. But as in most cases, I firmly believe that confidence, a willingness to admit you're wrong, willingness to listen to chat, because chat saves my bacon a heck of a lot, and also the fact that one of the main barriers people seem to have for homebrewing games or writing content for community content like this, or just creating content in general for role-playing games, is the what if I get it wrong. I'm going to just address the what if I get it wrong. You will. Almost certainly you will get it wrong, but that shouldn't... It's easier to say than to say, obviously, but that shouldn't stop you. I freely admit I get stuff wrong all the time. When I was writing the last season of the show, I say writing, it's not scripted. When I was writing the material during the last season of the show, I made mistakes. I worded things incorrectly that I've picked up in editing. I made poor life choices with one of the subclasses I made, but I'm still going to release it. I've just included a warning in the introduction that it's probably technically this works, but you shouldn't do this because this reason. But you will get things wrong. The only thing that you'll get things wrong because everyone makes mistakes. The only thing to bear in mind is, yes, you'll get things wrong, but you don't need to be an expert to do stuff. I'm certainly not an expert. Sorry, I need to hydrate. 1 second. I've been playing role-playing games for, actually just looking at the date, almost a decade now, writing my own material for them for like a third of that, and I'm not an expert. I know freelancers who admit they aren't experts. The only thing you actually need to know when writing homebrew, when writing content, whether for publishing or just homebrew games is you need to know how the game works at its most basic fundamental level. What's pretty cool, Pramster? So in this case, with Trinity Continuum, you need to know how dice pools are formed, you need to know how difficulty works, and you need to know how enhancement and complication works. That's largely it. So I'll break those terms down for you. The dice pool I've explained. You count out the dots on your sheet. Tells you how many d10 to roll. You roll the d10. Target. Do you write stuff? Oh yeah, I love writing stuff. A lot of... It's one of those things like every writer is almost certainly a GM, but not every GM is a writer. Some people just don't like doing it, and that's totally fair. I personally love it, and it takes courage. Oh yeah, I wouldn't say it takes courage. It takes a certain willingness to expose yourself to criticism. But I guess that's just semantics at that point. The whole point of the show is to demonstrate that anyone can write, that anyone can do this. It's not some special skill that I've picked up. It's just I sat down one day and started homebrewing for my D&D game, and then I started writing system. So I guess while I'm on the subject, so if you want to be in my position, which there are so many ways into writing material that it's, I can't say this is the one way you do it. So as I mentioned, I've been writing for 3 years. I started out with my own tabletop blog, which I just haven't had the time to maintain over the past year or so. I started out, so on there I would write system agnostic material, kind of setting inspiration, short pieces of fiction, anything to keep writing once a week for that weekly update. And then that gave me the platform to be like, hey, I'll write reviews for Onyx Path, which somehow became this, where I never wrote or recorded a review. I said I was happy to do video reviews because I stream on my own channel, and I have to edit that content occasionally when I have to cut stuff out or when files get corrupted and I have to stitch them together. So I was supposed to be doing video reviews, and here I am, 48 episodes in, still not doing video reviews, but soapboxing for 2 hours every 2 weeks. Still not entirely sure how that happened. Anyway, dice pools, target numbers. So target numbers give you successes. Successes are used to buy off difficulty. So if a roll is difficulty 3 and you get 4 successes, you can buy off that 3 difficulty and you succeed at the action. If you can't buy off the difficulty, you can't succeed, you fail. If you fail, you get constellations, which will come up in this, so I'll explain those as and when. But for now, the constellations are a mechanical reward for failure to keep the story going forwards. On top of difficulty, a roll may have complication. So complications, much like difficulty, are given a numerical value. 1 through whatever. 5 is very high. 1, 2, or 3 would be the good one. Pubs often downplays their skills. Yes, it's something everyone could do, but they do it very well. 1, thank you, Angel Wraith. 2, you have to say that as my partner. But yes. I don't... It's one of those things, right? I don't intentionally downplay my skills. I'm just surrounded by people who have way more experience doing it than I am. Complications, yes. So complications... you buy off difficulty. So going back to that previous example with 4 successes, difficulty 3 action. Not obligated to compliment you just to make sure you don't die. Fair. I'd like to not die. So this hypothetical action has a level 2 complication on it, shall we say. So you've got 1 success left, which means you've succeeded at the action. No one can take that action away. No one can take that success away from you. But you can't pay off the complication. So a negative thing still occurs. So a classic example is you're climbing a wall to get away from someone, and the top of the wall has shards of glass, right? So climbing the wall is the difficulty 3 action. The shards of glass are the level 2 complication. If you can't pay off the complication, the immediate and the obvious answer is you take damage. You take a level. You take a bruised damage condition in this game. Health is abstracted in this, but all you need to know for now is that you take damage. You get a bruised health condition as you cut yourself on the glass climbing over. What you could do, however, is if you have a moment to think about things, depending on your story guide, in Story Path system, it's a story guide. Depending on your story guide, you could take steps to either remove the complication entirely. So, you find something to climb on, so you can just easily jump over the wall without having to touch the broken glass, or you throw a jacket over the broken glass, and that either lowers the complication or removes it entirely. Another alternative is that taking that precaution gives you enhancement on a roll. Enhancement is extra successes. So as long as you get one success on a roll, any enhancement that you have, and Trinity Continuum is a lot more free with enhancement than Scion is. I will say that as a big difference between the two. But any enhancement that you have applies automatically and just gives you successes. So your story guide may rule that throwing the jacket, if it's sufficiently thick enough over the broken glass, will give you 2 enhancements, say. So you've got 4 successes on this difficulty 3, complication 2 action, with 2 enhancement. Those 4 successes with that 2 enhancement gives you 6 successes. With those 6 successes, you can buy off the difficulty 3, you climb the wall, and you buy off the level 2 complication. You get over it without any negative repercussion, leaving you 1 success left over. Now, things may have multiple complications, although both as someone who runs games and as someone who plays games, and I guess ultimately someone who writes material, don't be that person and stack negative modifiers. Just have one. Don't have multiple sources. One, as a player, it feels terrible because it feels like whoever's running the game doesn't want you to succeed. 2, as someone who writes content, it's just lazy. Like, if you have 3 different sources that add like 3 1-point complications, just have 1 3-point complication. Just summarize them. Just do it. Just do that. And then, as someone who runs games a lot, and this is just general advice, really, just cut down on your overhead. You've got enough to be thinking about running games. You don't have to be thinking about 3 floating modifiers because of reasons X, Y, and Z. I may be getting a slight bugbear off my chest about a couple of games here. I apologize, but it's just, GMs have enough to think about. You don't want to be doing unnecessary number crunching if you don't have to. Okay, but that's dice pools, dice rolling, difficulty, enhancement, success, and that's the core. That's it. That's the core mechanics you need to understand to write any material for Trinity Continuum, and by extension any other Story Path game. But I would highly recommend reading the rulebook for each game to figure out how it. Oh, I will look to the side, by the way, because I've got the Scion rulebooks just out of you. So when I'm talking about it, obviously I'm thinking about it, and though I look at it. Completely lost my train of thought, so we're moving on. Yep, no, it's gone. Anyway, so as long as you understand how the core mechanic works in a game, and obviously that's harder in some games than others, like I mentioned Wizards earlier, D&D's core mechanic of roll the d20, add a single number to it, very simple. In which case you might draw upon other mechanics. So as I did, like with last season, I brought in hit dice and spending those for bonus effects. I've been reading the Exalted Essence Kickstarter manuscript preview, where some of the effects there are you willingly take damage to produce an effect. That's all extra stuff. To start out, I would highly recommend just being like, hey, this is the core mechanic. How can I change it to suit my ends? Now, I'm not saying I won't be bringing in extra stuff, but I will try my hardest to keep things simple for this. Sometimes one of the hardest things in the world is self-awareness. I'm aware that I like to do things not particularly the hard way, but my way, so that it leaves the playing field open for other people to do things their way. And sometimes I have to take a step back from that and go like, no, this is unnecessarily complicated. There is an easier way to do this to get the same effect. Why not just do it that way, you dingus? So I will try to keep that in mind. Chat, keep me honest, pull me up on it if I do start overcomplicating things. But there we go. I think I think we're good. I don't want another 2-hour soapbox episode. So if you're new to the show, whether you've not been interested in what I've done before, or you use the Onyx Path channel, I do record these and I do upload them onto my YouTube channel. You'll have to go to YouTube and manually search for Comrade Bubbles. I am not a partner. I don't have a fancy link. Well, I mean, I have a fancy link in that I have a link, but it's alphanumeric nonsense. But if you find the first season of Behind the Screen with the Onyx Path branding, the first episode of that is kind of my general tips episode for writing content and running games. I think it still holds up. I might revisit it in the future, as you know, I'm over 2 years down the line from recording that episode, and I've grown since then. I've learned new things. I've hopefully gained better habits and all of that good stuff. But that said, as you can see next to my face, please do feel free to ask anything you can think of relating to playing/running Onyx Path role-playing games. Technically, I will answer any question about any role-playing game. It's just this is Onyx Path's channel, so I felt like having that focus is nice. But I'll answer any question I can. While, yes, the primary purpose of the show is I write community content and demonstrate how to do so, it's also just a GM tips thing. I don't have all the answers. No one has all the answers. But I can certainly give you my perspective on things. Right, I'm going to put the bouncy balls I've been fiddling with down, and we're going to start pressing keys on the keyboard. The webcam will shake. I apologize about that, so you might want to focus on something else. Probably the text, let's be honest. So, I have an hour before I need to start thinking about wrapping things up. So ideally, I'd like to get at least somewhere into doing body horror stuff. But important to formatting also. Let's go back to basics. I just slammed my ring into my knuckle. Back to basics, don't do that. So, I guess if you want to know how to do it my way, I mentioned the importance of formatting, but didn't explain how to do that. I apologize. So, starting with a fresh Word document, the default, I believe default word settings are Calibri is your default font for like everything. But the headings default to blue for some reason. So if you want to set them up like I've got them, or just like if you want to know how to use Word, I guess, if you right click, so this is the home tab and the ribbon at the top. If you right click where it says heading 1, it brings up a new menu. You just click modify, it brings up where you can change the settings. All I've done is change it to the automatic color choice, but you can change font, you can change size, you can do all that good stuff. You won't have all these fonts, but if you didn't know, Microsoft Word previews the font choice for you, which is pretty cool. And it's really easy to get your own fonts into it. One of the great things about writing community content for Onyx Path specifically is that the resources are there; they are provided for you, so you can use the official fonts. Well, I said you can use the fonts that the rest of the products use, as well as templates and things. But all I did was left it on Calibri, 'cause it's nice, readable font. Set it to automatic, and that's it. So that's how you do settings. See how you do headings. Heading 2 is exactly the same. You right click it, click modify, set it to whatever color you want. You can change the size as well. I'm just leaving it as is. when heading 3, as soon as you set something to heading 2, you'll get a heading 3 box option in the styles gallery at the top. Exactly the same thing there, and you'll witness me do it on stream because I will inevitably need a heading 3. You can, if you want to, click this and one of these boxes shows you, if you click the options, you can then go to all styles, and that just gives you way more styles to modify. Largely speaking, you don't need to, though, because once it's... that wasn't what I wanted to do at all. You can either set it to in use or just recommended, and Word will add to your options as you go. It's pretty good. Another thing I've done, I mentioned earlier, I've put things into different sections. That is done in layout, breaks, and then I use section break on the next page. This ensures that your next section starts on a new page. It's not as immediately useful now to have different sections, but when it comes to collating the final document, or collating is the wrong word, when it comes to kind of putting it into the template or making your own template, if everything is its own section, you can set section-specific headers or footers, or both if you prefer, and it will save a lot of headache later on down the line. This is something that I'm really happy I discovered how to do. That's that. And then the last thing to note is the View tab. If you want, for ease of navigation, just click Navigation Pane, and it shows you your headings. So you can just click through the document at will. This will also accommodate subheadings. So if I had anything with heading 2 in Introduction, it will put it under Introduction in a indented list, and so on and so forth, to allow you to go through the subheadings. If you aren't working from a template, so for context, I have a Patreon campaign where I make my own D&D 5e campaign setting. Every month I put out two sections of it, one of which does use subheadings and headings. Word allows you to save a PDF using headings as bookmarks. So if you can't afford InDesign, and most people can't, but you have access to Word, a lot of Word will allow you to save a PDF with bookmarks already put in based on your headings. So again, if you format things correctly, you save yourself a lot of headache in the long run. And everyone just likes using a bookmark PDF. It's a lot easier than scrolling through a PDF looking for a section you know is there, but you can't remember the page number of. And also, just having the navigation pane allows you to do the Control F function to find stuff already without having to press Control F because of the search bar. I will close it, however, for ease of display. I think really that's it for the most part. Writing is generally plain text, and then layout, obviously put art and stuff, but this isn't an editing tutorial or a layout tutorial. I would not proclaim to be able to do a layout tutorial. But there we go. Back to home. I think that's everything. Oh, another thing to note, if you want indentations, don't mash the space bar and don't press tab. Word has an indent tool. It's here. Use it, please. I'm a trained editor and proofreader, and this helps so much. The tab and space messes with formatting when new lines are entered or when things are updated, whereas the indent tool doesn't. That's it. And if you're ever unsure about where your section breaks and whatnot lie, if you click this little symbol, it shows you your punctuation. So, that is everything. I'm going to hydrate again, and then we're going to get started. I'm also not an expert in Word. I just know what I need to know to do what I do. Just because horror games involve scaring the player characters, players themselves should not be scared, forced to feel uncomfortable, or otherwise upset. Obviously, so last year, was it last year or was it the year before? There's a whole kerfuffle, furore on the internet about safety tools. Ordinarily, I don't write the introduction on stream, but I'm going to write the introduction on stream this time to demonstrate safety tools and how important they are, and kind of discuss them. If you decide to use any of the content or themes included in this supplement, I highly recommend the use of one or more of the safety tools included below. Further information on each tool can be found on the internet. I will attempt to summarize the relevant information and provide links where possible. So I could do a bullet pointed list here, but as I haven't done anything like, hey, here's the safety tools are : I'm just going to treat it more as standard paragraph writing. Also, that could take part in that paragraph. The most obvious safety tool is... this isn't the final format of the introduction, by the way. What I generally do with introductions, and something that I think a lot of people do, is it's the last thing you write because you know what content is included, so you can introduce it. So I'm not going to write the whole introduction. I'm just going to write the salient points, mostly the safety tools. And then when I edit this, I will know what content is included, so I'll be able to introduce it and explain some things, as well as provide a link to the playlist of the episodes. That is something I include in all of my in all of the content that I write where I can. Is to run a session 0 in which you, your players, and any potential observers can air any concerns they have and discuss the use of other safety tools. Many groups like to keep a written record of their session 0 for future reference, and it is important to note that any decisions made during a session 0 are not final and can be altered at any time to accommodate changing needs and concerns. A common safety tool employed during a session 0 is a consent checklist. Many of these can be found online for free. Seriously, don't pay for a consent checklist. If you need one, just message me and I'll write one for you. But there are loads out there that are free. I personally use Monty Cook's Gaming and Consent Checklist. It is what it is. And provide a very simple method of indicating what content a participant is comfortable with exploring / dealing with, what content they are kind of comfortable touching on, but fading to black when encountered, and what content they do not want to engage with. I highly recommend that one person aggregates the data. There's some buzzwords for you from this checklist, and maintains / updates a master checklist to anonymize any concerns. So if you haven't, no judgment if you haven't, but if you haven't encountered a consent checklist before, so the one I use, the Monty Cook one, it uses a traffic light system, and it has a whole list of potentially triggering topics. And if you indicate green, you're totally happy to deal with that topic, subject, theme, what have you. If you indicate yellow, you're happy for it to be mentioned, but if it happens, you want it to occur off screen. And then red is just don't bring that up. So personally speaking, I'm fine with the vast majority of things, but one of my red topics is cancer. As a survivor myself, it's just something I don't want to be dealing with at the tabletop. Over the past year, one of my red topics has also been the COVID pandemic. Every game I've run, I've been upfront with my players that if it's set in the present day, that we just aren't. It's not going to be a thing. We're not discussing it, and everyone was pretty happy for that to occur. A good checklist will also have is there anything else not covered on this list that you want to let the story guide know? Again, that's just if it's on a master list, apart from the person who compiled the master list, no one knows who wrote that, so there's no pressure on you to explain, and no one should be asking you to explain anyway. If they are, that's just being mean for no good reason, personally speaking. If the list does not include space for such, it is worth providing materials to record any additional things participants may be unwilling to engage with, to encounter in game. So consent checklist is, as I say, it's one of the most common ones. I'm just going to hydrate and then we'll continue. I'm also going to save. Save regularly. Something I haven't had to do previously on the show is save, because Google Docs auto saves it. So yeah, I'm going to have to remember to do that. That's going to be annoying. But save regularly. You don't want to work for 2 hours and then close the document without saving it. Word usually pretty good at reminding you, but sometimes the document just closes, like Word crashes, and you're like, oh, yay. During gameplay, if anything comes up that again, I'm putting participant because I'm aware that sometimes people like to watch role-playing games and not play them. So if they're just sitting in the room, quietly in a corner observing, and something comes up they're not happy with, they still get a voice. They still get to convey that this is making them uncomfortable. And I'm trying to be considerate of that. So that's why I'm saying participant, not player. During gameplay, if anything comes up, the participant is... Oh, I need to... 1 second before I do that. There was another paragraph I needed to add here. Another common safety tool that Something in my eye, I'm sorry. Can replace or supplement the consent checklist is a discussion of lines. What I will likely do is just have at the end of the introduction, I'll just have a section of links for, hey, go here for lines and veils, go here for the X card, etc. It's a discussion of lines and veils. Lines are subjects you do not want to encounter, and veils are things you are happy to explore, but with the caveat, sorry, not explore, happy to have come up at the table, but want to happen off screen or in a fade to black moment. That needs hyphenating because it qualifies moment. Should that be supplement with an I? 1 second. Oh, there is no I. Excellent. With my brain just being like, hey, you're overthinking this word. During gameplay, if anything comes up that a participant is uncomfortable with, a selection of tools do exist to convey desire to move on. The most well known being the X card, typically represented by a card, by an X drawn on a card within. This, I will say, this paragraph obviously about in-person games. Don't worry, I've got online tools already in the pipeline. That will be the next section. Typically represented by an X drawn on a card within easy reach of all participants. Anyone can at any time tap the card to immediately change the subject, scene / topic without a need for explanation. For games that are run online, common substitutes include typing an X into a chat feature, chat function, or crossing one's arms in front of a webcam. It is very important to note, and bears repeating, that no one must explain why they are uncomfortable. Sorry, I just need to think about how to phrase the next set of safety, the next option. Okay. It's possible that some situations arise that, when not considered as part of the session 0, but allow a participant, again, not just players, participant to, if you can't tell by the spelling, by the way, the accent, indeed, I am British English, so I type in British English. So if some words do look weird to you, that's probably why. But allow a participant to realize that they are being made uncomfortable by what is being discussed. If this is the case, several tools, and the participant decides the X card is not needed, as they are willing to engage with the subject to a limited degree. Got to stop using parentheses, similar to veils above. Let's see. That is a long subordinate clause. I need to end the sentence. A couple of tools. The following can be used. The group can agree on a safe word to be used in such a circumstance that will draw attention to the fact that someone wishes to explore the current subject, doesn't wish to explore the current subject any deeper. Or they may cover their face. I think this can be parenthetically highlighted. This also works as a substitute for the X card if you are unwilling to show your reaction to any uncomfortable material. Additionally, if a participant feels confident enough to do so, they may simply outright state. They may simply say how they feel about a subject, or call for a break at any time. To potentially discuss things with, in this case, with the story guide. So, the story guide. If these tools are used, please do update any checklist or otherwise being used, comma, or otherwise make a note of the triggering topic to be avoided in the future. Because, as I said at the top, horror games are about scaring player characters, not about scaring players. Or, sorry, more accurately, horror games are about making player characters uncomfortable and putting them into horrific situations. It's not about traumatizing your players themselves. Everyone should be having fun. Let's update that. Involve placing the player characters into horrific situations. Players themselves should not be scared, forced to feel uncomfortable, or otherwise upset. You can unnerve a player. You can make a player tense or trepidatious, but, you know, don't be an a-hole about it. So that's safety tools. Obviously, this isn't final. I may edit this and update it to reflect new tools and whatnot by the time when they come around to publishing this. Again, this will be on the Storypath Nexus, but I felt like it was important to include something about safety tools in a supplement about horror, because horror as a genre is where you're most often going to be encountering things that you'll need safety tools for. Although you should generally be using safety tools anyway, because, you know, your lived experience differs to everyone else's, and some people may genuinely be hurt, upset, made uncomfortable, or otherwise not want to engage with something. I know what I want to say. Sometimes I'm just not the best at explaining it. Okay, so the rest of this document will explore a variety of mechanics and tweaks you can apply to your own games of Trinity Continuum to evoke a selection of horror genres. That's not how you spell genres. As most horror spans multiple genres, it is recommended that you use these suggestions in, that's not how you spell that word, in conjunction with each other, but you are more than welcome to use them however you see fit. Before fully exploring these themes, before fully exploring this, however, it is worth talking briefly about how to support the relevant atmosphere at the table. The most obvious way of creating and maintaining a tense. Thinking about it, I might cut this stream short when I'm done with the introduction. Mostly because once I start on something, I like to go until I finish it, just so that I get everything down that I can think of, even if I have to cover that over 2 streams. So I might just do the introduction today and the stream at whatever time that runs to. I mean, technically speaking, I have another 50 minutes. 5 minutes of that is for the post roll, so you can see what else is on the channel. And then it usually takes me about 10 minutes to do my outro, so I only have another half hour-ish of writing anyway, so I may have to... I may just be on the introduction to my usual cut-off point. Who knows? It's just something I'm thinking of to keep things nice and on topic per video. I don't. I personally enjoy watching things where like one stream or one video is focused on one topic. I don't like watching things that are spread out too much. But again, that's personal preference. The most obvious way of creating and maintaining a tense atmosphere is through the use of light and sound. Mood lighting and ambient playlists can make a powerful can be a powerful combination. Powerful combination, especially when used in conjunction with a soundboard. Although this should be used sparingly. If you do plan to use these, please do bear in mind any accessibility requirements. Low light levels can make reading character sheets difficult. Certain ambient noises can cause headaches. And no one wants to be blinded by a mobile, an electronic screen when checking a character sheet. So obviously, if it's dark, I struggle to read in the dark. I don't have any reading difficulties. The ambient noise one I do suffer from. A good example of this is if you watch any sci-fi show set in space, there's usually some kind of white noise focused rumble in the background of a lot of scenes to simulate the engine sound. I didn't really realize this was a problem until I started playing Phasmophobia. Phasmophobia uses that white noise engine sound as its music. That's all it is. It's just that noise and footsteps. And I discovered that sound, kind of a low rumbling noise that has very little, I don't have a better word for it than texture to it, does in fact give me a headache after about an hour. So yes, it may be less of a problem during a tabletop role-playing session when people are talking and you're focusing on things. But I mean, I play Phasmophobia with other people, and it's still an issue. So that's what I mean by certain ambient noises can cause headaches. And yeah, just if you're in a dark room because of mood lighting and you look down at your phone or your laptop or your tablet because you've got your character sheet electronically, you're going to hurt your eyes. But I just want to say no one wants to be blinded, to give a bit of levity to the introduction, because it's been pretty heavy so far talking about safety tools. And while yes, the supplement is intended to be about horror, it's like it's a demonstration of how pacing helps. I'll you know what? I'll just discuss it as the next point. I'll put my so when I'm not typing, I'm probably playing with bouncy balls, give my hand something to do. So if I kind of reach forward and it looks like I'm reaching forward for something, that's what I'm doing, putting the balls back. Speaking of electronic screens, horror games work best when played with minimal distractions. And full player buy-in. As genres go, it is perhaps the hardest to maintain, as everyone needs to contribute to the suspension of, I mean, like, if you're playing a horror game, right, you know you're not in danger because you aren't your character. But you have to suspend that disbelief. You have to buy in. You have to encourage the atmosphere. And playing on your phone's not going to do it. I am fully aware that that is how some people focus and it helps people focus. And I'm not saying don't do that because you shouldn't. If that truly helps you connect with the game, go ahead and do it. What I mean by minimal distractions is that people who just get bored and just pull out their phone and start doing stuff on it. If you're bored, it's probably not the game for you, and you should have that discussion, with the player group or with the story guide independently, or raise that at session 0. And if that is the case, then measures can be taken, like breaks can be had, regular breaks can be had, where you can do something to occupy, where you can do something to occupy mind and whatnot. It's off-putting to the story guide. Sometimes the other players looking at their phones and breaks down. Yes, it does. And it's sometimes difficult to know whether someone is bored or whether they're just, it helps them to focus and engage better. Going back to the whole thing a couple of years ago with fidget spinners. I mean, it's why I keep the bouncy balls handy. Just having something to do with my hands really helps me focus. And I know that it helps Angel focus as well. Struggle to stay focused. That's no issue for people. Exactly, no issue for people with. Yeah, it is stimming Urban Dragon dice, and it does help. And sometimes it's difficult to have that conversation with someone about whether they genuinely need to do that to engage properly and focus, or if they're just bored. Sometimes just explain storyteller why looking at your phone is also good. Yeah, exactly. So an example of this is also hello Urban Dragon dice. Thank you for chiming in. In a non-sarcastic way. I apologise for my voice. It makes things sound sarcastic, and I didn't mean to. An example of this is I ran a game of Chronicles of Darkness, back when it was New World of Darkness, for the Student Nationals Role-Playing and Wargaming Championships here in the UK. If you don't know what that is, it's a charitable tournament where all money raised goes to the host's charity of choice. Here for the Trinity Continuum stuff? Excellent. Well, if you ever want to correct me, feel free to do so. We'll get there at some point in this show, I promise. Probably next stream. So somehow my university won, despite the fact that we fielded one of the smallest teams the year before, but we hosted it. So I was able to volunteer to run a game for it. And yeah, I ran New World of Darkness. It wasn't particularly horror-based. It was more... a friend of mine loaned me the slasher book for Hunter. So we had it was slasher focused. It was serial killer themed. So it was less horror, more tense. And I did a decent job at the tense atmosphere. But the person right next to me was constantly drawing, and at the time I got annoyed by it. But then I realized after I didn't say anything because I mature. But it took me until I think last year to realize that they were probably doing it just because that helped them focus on the game. It kept their hands busy. And I'm mature enough to admit that I made assumptions that I shouldn't have. I didn't act on them because it wasn't my place to act on them. I continued with the game, tried to make sure everyone had as much fun as possible, tried to include everyone, and everyone had a great time of it. I got great feedback. But yeah, exactly, doodling to focus. I know Angel does it as well occasionally. And I'm happy I didn't make a big deal of it because, I didn't want to be the a-hole in that situation. Played it back in its original editions, ran, actually. Ooh, excellent. My only exposure to TC is the Storypath version, so if I have any questions, I know who to ask. Yes, so I need to boil that sentiment down into a sentence. Yeah, see, I can't doodle, so... Hey, there's the Kickstarter link for the Apocalyptic Record. I wonder where Nightbot was. Needs to contribute to the suspension of disbelief by being an active participant. However, in capitals, it cannot be overstated that some people find it far easier to, well, just some people find it easier to focus when their hands are occupied, or they appear to be otherwise engaged. If this is the case, I recommend having a private discussion to determine if the game is for them. No. Nightbot was sleeping. I had the Blue Band Book of Aberrant and Aeon before I returned it to Trinity. Cool. That's a while ago, right? Just from general reading. Nightbot was sleeping. What it might have been was Nightbot set to trigger after so many lines of chat. To determine if this helps. 98-ish? Yeah, that's what I figured. The player to take part in the game or is related to board. Is that a good way of phrasing it, chat? I don't really have access to a sensitivity reader, but I think that's a decent way of phrasing it. Had all the non-Wild White Wolf stuff. That's a lot of stuff. I know. I should say that's a lot of page count. Man, I played 2nd edition Exalted. That was a tome. I think it's a reasonably sensitive way of phrasing it. As someone who doesn't have easy access to a sensitivity reader, I mean, that's what you're for. Kind of says that some people find it easy to focus when their hands are occupied or they appear to be otherwise engaged. Third Eclipse is 2nd. Oh yes, I know Third Eclipse is 2nd. That's why I waited until Essence came around to get on the Exalted train. I mean, Essence is still 400 pages, the core book of Essence. But I think the core book of Essence is it, really. I don't think there's plans for many supplements for that, from what I remember reading during the Kickstarter. I said some people find it easy to focus when their hands are occupied or they appear to be otherwise engaged. If this is the case, I recommend having a private discussion to determine if this helps the player to take part in the game or is related to boredom. And if there is anything, Essence is in the right direction. I'm really enjoying the Essence rules. You can do to help. You as the SG can do to help. As part of the collective, you know what, I might even finish the introduction today. That's an issue. Suspension of disbelief. Most wish I would support Essence more. Player's Guide, James World Guide would be nice. Yes, well, Essence has what? Every Exalt type, charms for every Exalt type, an overview of creation. I think a companion was. I think there was a companion stretch goal with more charms and information and antagonists as well. But at the same time, I can kind of understand why, because they obviously want people to play. Well, they want people to play both Essence and Third Ed, but Essence is just hey, Third Ed you could make a house from quite easily. Here's a streamlined-ish version of the rules to use. I believe a faux book was reached, actually. Now I'm getting distracted, but I mean, I say streamlined. It's still 400. The back of previous manuscript is 400 pages. Where did the oh God, I'm just scrolling through here. I'd forgotten how good the art was on the Kickstarter campaign. Storyteller screen, Universal Charms, Evocations, Hearthstones, War Striders, a Jumpstart, Martial Arts, extra antagonists, and NPC examples focusing on demons and fair folk. More locations included in the companion, so more world info. An adventure. More charms. More storyteller advice. More charms. More information on cosmology and deities. More antagonists. More artifacts. Charm cards. Gosh, that'd be so useful. Not that I will ever get to play Exalted Essence or run it, but there we go. More locations. More antagonist NPC stuff. More martial arts. More advice and adventure hooks. Sorcery and necromancy. Wow, I'd forgotten how much this campaign actually unlocked. Faction write-ups. Different kinds of Exalted. More antagonists. Horrors of the Continuum, baddies. Horrors of the Continuum will be a selection of rules tweaks, gifts and edges, and potentially some antagonists to simulate horror gameplay in Trinity Continuum core. I was going to call this like Trinity Continuum ARG to accommodate the fact that the tradition is TC or Trinity ARG, to accommodate the fact that it's always Trinity and something beginning with A. But then I realized I didn't want to imply this is an official product, and I didn't want to get in trouble for doing that. So I just named it Horrors of the Continuum instead. It's always daunting to even attempt to streamline X3. Yes, Pramster. I do not envy the job that was ahead of them when they sat down to write Essence. Or develop Essence, I guess. Anyway, as part of the collective suspension of disbelief, it is important for all participants to remain in the, I guess, headspace of their character. And limit table talk or out of character discussion. To a minimum. The requirements of storytelling. Stop pressing R, you fool! That's what I was doing wrong. There we go. The requirements of storytelling and human nature require breaks in the tension. So it is encouraged that scenes of relaxation, levity, and I had a third word. Safety. There we go. So it encourages scenes of relaxation, levity, and safety periodically take place. Take place to allow players to maintain to allow all participants maintain the required the relevant atmosphere. More than any other genre, horror games also benefit from regular breaks in play Allow your players to air any issues and regain mental energy. Sometimes known as spoons. Just a side little fact there. Sometimes think they should have taken it back to formula and tried to greatly reduce the core book, at least for accessibility for new players. Essence alone covering 10 exalted types is a bit much. Yes, the 10 types is a bit much, especially as they're adding Umbral and Dreamsoul or whatever it was into the companion. I feel like they could potentially just have maybe had it as Solars, Lunars, Sidereals, and maybe Dragon Blooded in the core book. Maybe. And then alluded to the other types, but had those in the companion, rather than having all 10 of like the base Exalt types. Especially Exigence. I don't know why Exigence are in the core book, but that's just my personal thinking, obviously. Like, if you're playing a game for streamlined purposes, having the ability to create a new archetype really isn't... Although, I'm going to leave that train of thought unfinished. The book does recommend you like which Exalt types to play as if you are unsure and unfamiliar with the game. Well, I found Japan is called Table Talk more than Tabletop. Oh, that's cool. I never knew that. I've heard it called Table Talk on the internet. I always, it's out of character conversation, but I just figured I'd go with what the most people seem familiar with. Hence Table Talk. So I've got Sound and Light, Collective Suspension of Disbelief, I guess Location as well. Location can also play a big part in... Exigence is best to be based on existing archetypes of reskinning. Exactly. But at that point, just reskin. But I see why they're there. Location can also play a big part in maintaining the atmosphere of a role-playing game. Of any role-playing game, regardless of genre. As someone who runs games professionally in a board game cafe, boy, is that not the best situation, but it is what it is. Regardless of genre. And breaks be scheduled around regular interruptions. Okay, so that's that. Yeah, I've got, I think, one last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll continue. As an aside, my personal tip for increasing player buy-in by creating tension for the players rather than characters, is to be open about difficulty and complication of every role. While some SGs like to keep such things secret, I found it produces a more visceral reaction. Players know what they are striving what they need to succeed, as they are again, this is very informal writing. If you do want to write, I would not put capitals for emphasis. but as this is an introduction, I'm keeping it pretty informal. I may alter this when I go back and edit it as well, but there we go. Story path system works better with at least a general plot point behind. Oh yes, yeah, more than a lot of systems. Just being aware of what could go wrong in story path, it gives you that automatic buy-in because you don't want that to happen. Whereas with other games, it's like, oh, I failed, okay, or you need this DC. If with like a D&D example, you need this DC, otherwise you'll fail. Okay, you passed, well done. Whereas with story path, it's like, this is the difficulty, and the difficulty might be reasonable, but then this is the complication which will make your life worse without taking away your success. And knowing those odds is just very, very good. This is something this is why I try to remember to do it for important roles in D&D. It's less of an issue in D&D, obviously, but for important roles, I do try to let my players know that I'm trying to get into the habit of letting my players know the DC, because just watching them sweat when they need to roll, a stealth check, for example, actually with my current player party, it's less stealth is the issue. It's more they need to remember some important information at a key time, or they need to move something heavy in order to succeed. Causes weird alternative paths plot-wise? Yes, because also if a player knows the number they need and they look at their sheet and they're like, there's no way in heck I can succeed at this roll, it makes them think of an alternate. It makes them think of an alternate solution. So it also forces player creativity, or not forces, inspires player creativity. I'm very aware of. None of us are smart. No, babe. Maybe next time one of you should play an intelligence-based character. Of their characters. Limitations. This also has the added benefit of inspiring. I mean, this is also obviously something that's less sorry, I'm trying to think how to explain. This is less important as a trick for experienced story path players, but for people who have come to the story path system from other games, who don't intuitively understand the fact that you can posit any combination of attribute and skill for a role as long as it makes sense. This helps with that, because the obvious solution may not work for the character, but they're like, but this adjacent solution could work. And obviously, a lot of the time, the story guide's like, "Hey, you can try it." Of inspiring players to consider alternative solutions to problems. Whether by altering their approach entirely, or by suggesting... Oops, put an eye in it. Whoops. Again, anyone that ever wants to call me out on what I'm talking about, feel free to do so. I admit I don't have all the answers. Well, I think that's it. I think that's the amount of introduction I'm going to write on stream anyway. That's a long introduction for me as well, at 2 pages. What happens if I put it into 2 columns? Because obviously the book's usually in 2 columns. Still an appreciable amount. Back to single column, please. If you're new here, I would like to take this time to remind to recap a couple of things. So today, I've discussed, I guess, the basics of Trinity Continuum, the basics of the show for people who may be unfamiliar with it. I have had a month off, and some safety tools you can use for horror role playing, as well as just general interacting with chat and hopefully providing some entertaining commentary upon my writing and well thought out and considered explanations. If you came in at the... You know what, I'll do that bit last. So at the start of the show, I did discuss... I did talk about, the... where is it? The Monday meeting notes. The Monday meeting notes are the best place to go for Onyx Path updates, project timelines, Kickstarters, all of that stuff. Again, I'll do a really swift recap for those who missed the start of the stream. The big thing right now, understandably so, is, as Nightbot's been dropping the link for actually, is the Apocalyptic Record Kickstarter for Werewolf, the 20th anniversary edition of Werewolf the Apocalypse. No, wait, that's Exalted Essence. Ignore that. Ignore that. That is the wrong link. Just click the Nightbot link instead. I can't delete just one message as a mod, I believe. So ignore the Kickstarter link I just shared. It's the wrong thing. Nightbot, however, has been sharing the right link for the Apocalyptic Record for Werewolf the Apocalypse 20th edition. 200% funded, so that's pretty good. Other things to note that over the weekend, Mystery Science Theatre 3000, I said it correctly this time, MST3K, announced sponsors for their upcoming season and their streaming site, and Onyx Path is one of those sponsors. So they've obviously been working together on some things, but there is no information about that. There is discussion about the panels that happened again at the Save Against Fear Con, as well as some talk about the Crossroads continent, the new 5e setting that Onyx Path are working on, Rich Thomas's personal setting that Travis is helping to realize in D&D 5e. Drive-Thru RPG is having a Halloween sale on Thursday, 20 to 40% off the horror games. If you do pick up the Chronicles of Darkness Blue Book, or the core rule book if you prefer, if you search for the Radford Estate, you should find an introductory adventure that I wrote on this show. It is free. Well, it's not free, it's pay what you want, but it could be free. If you forget between now and then the name of the adventure, or you just want a direct link at any point, feel free to either hit me up on Twitter, at Comrade Bubbles, that's why it's under the webcam, or if you follow me on my own Twitch channel, I'm always happy to talk about role-playing over there. Again, that's Comrade Bubbles. What else? Standard links to podcasts and actual plays. My face is on the Onyx Path channel for once, YouTube channel for once, as I took part in the Trinity Continuum Storypath Showcase. Travis has been running a couple of Storypath showcases for the various Storypath powered games. He's doing Aeon, and I think he's done Aberrant. I might be wrong about that. But I took part in just the Trinity Continuum core game. That was a great four sessions. If you are interested, if you do enjoy that, actually, thinking about it, if you enjoy that, Travis did compile all of his session notes into a document on the Storypath Nexus itself. It's, I think, $1.95, and on top of the adventure that he wrote for the show, you also get character sheets for the 3-player characters, including background and kind of role-playing hints, and that was a blast. We made our own characters. Session 0 is up on the YouTube channel. The finale is up now, so you can watch it in its entirety. It was a lot of fun to take part in, and hopefully you enjoy it. What else? Panels, podcasts, actual plays, as I mentioned. Virtual tabletop links to jumpstarts on Astral, I think it is. I would assume they're Astral ready. Yes. On Astral, you can get the Trinity Continuum jumpstart, the Aberrant Jumpstart and the Aeon Jumpstart, as well as Pugmai's Jumpstart and a couple of other things around Astral, and then some tabletop agnostic tokens and things like that. I've touched on the sales, I've touched on the Kickstarter. On Wednesday, Ghost Hunters for the 20th anniversary World of Darkness game lines goes live. That's just ghosts. It is what it is. And then project updates continue apace as they usually do. If you came in midway through the stream and do want to watch the start of it, subscribers to this Twitch channel do have a week's exclusivity on that, so you will have to wait a week before you can watch the video on demand. After that week's exclusivity, however, I do also upload these onto my personal YouTube channel. I say personal; it's technically my brand account, I guess. But that's Comrade Bubbles. They go up in a behind the screen playlist, sorted by season, which seemed to make sense to me to sort them by season, because I do a different game line every season. For posterity, I have been recording this entire thing, so any comments you've made, my mistakes, all of that stuff is recorded for posterity. I think that's everything. I will be live on my own channel in about 40 minutes, so that's 4:30 British Summer Time, which is UTC +1. I know I'm like 5 hours ahead of Eastern Daylight Time. If you do want to hang out over there and chat, I play video games on my channel primarily, but I'm always happy to talk about role-playing stuff, and quite often do, as it turns out. But I'm always happy to answer lingering questions there, happy to answer lingering questions on Twitter. I've mentioned Comrade Bubbles, and also I'll be in chat for while the post roll runs, just if you have any questions you want to ask, really. Just trying to think, running through stuff. Do my show notes declare I should talk about anything at the end of the stream? No, I'll cover the types of horror at the start of the next stream. So I think that's it, really. All that remains is for me to say thank you for watching. Please do stick around for the post roll, where you'll be able to check out the branding for all of the shows that are coming up this week. As the Monday meeting notes go up on a Monday evening, the branding, the schedule starts on a Tuesday, which means that I get the enviable first slot that doesn't terrify me at all to have. But all of the branding's there, including time, date, game that they're playing, all of that good stuff. I think that's it. So from me to you and your loved ones, please do stay safe. Please do stay healthy. Please do stay wholesome. And that reminds me, if anyone does stick around for the post roll, could you let me know in chat if there's any weird audio issues? Because I can't tell if there's an audio thing happening on my end, but I suspect there may be. Anyway, this show will be back in 2 weeks' time on the 26th of Halloween. You fool! The 26th of October, nearly Halloween, where we will be discussing body horror in your games of Trinity Continuum. But hopefully you'll come back for that one. See ya.